Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty wild, how one single pop track managed to perfectly bottle up the economic anxiety and political unrest of the United Kingdom back in 1981. We're looking at a fascinating intersection of pop culture, economics, and sociology here. We'll be drawing on some incredible source material today, including a deep dive academic thesis by Susan Conduit on the sociopolitical context of the 1970s, as well as a brilliant retrospective from the new British canon. Together, they reveal how a very specific time and a very specific place created a musical artifact like literally no other. Let's get right into it. It's a striking question, isn't it? We tend to think of pop music as pure escapism, just a way to dance away our troubles. But I want you to consider this eerie coincidence. Imagine a haunting, atmospheric track climbing the charts and hitting #1 at the exact moment a nation literally bursts into flames. Usually, rock and punk are the genres we associate with social rebellion, while pop reigns supreme in the charts. But every so often, a song beats the impossible odds and captures the exact temperature of a historical moment. The song was Ghost Town by The Specials. The Ghost Town EP debuted in June 1981 at number 21, but by the 11th of July, it had shot all the way up to number 1, where it stayed for 3 full weeks. And as our sources point out, the week it reached the very top of the UK charts, riots ripped right through the country, from Brixton in London all the way to Handsworth in Birmingham. It was an incredibly visceral artifact. The music playing on the radio was a direct mirror to the intense, fiery disturbances happening out in the streets. But to really understand why this happened, we have to rewind a bit and look at the geography that birthed it. Section 1. West Midlands, boom to bust. If we trace the macroeconomic shift of the region, we can see exactly how the groundwork was laid. As Susan Conduit's academic research details, the 1950s saw this massive post-war boom driven by Keynesian economic principles. The government was actively managing demand to maintain full employment, and the manufacturing sector, especially the car industry, absolutely exploded. This massive demand for labor in the 1960s led to significant West Indian migration to Midland cities like Birmingham and Coventry. But fast forward to the late 1970s, and the economic model began to really struggle with high inflation and high unemployment. The region underwent severe deindustrialization, and with the election of a new conservative government in 1979, the UK shifted toward monetarism. The result? A stark and immediate spike in joblessness. The sheer contrast here is just staggering. Back in the 1950s and 60s, Coventry and Birmingham were true boom towns, with a massive car industry, high labor demand, and incredibly diverse migrant populations integrating into the workforce and local neighborhoods. Then, just a decade or so later, the late 70s introduced a very different, harsh reality. Deindustrialization took a stranglehold. The new monetarist policies shifted away from government intervention for full employment, and the result was closed businesses and soaring unemployment that completely hollowed out these specific industrial hubs. And the band members of The Specials, they were out on tour, witnessing this national decline firsthand. Mastermind and keyboardist Jerry Dammers noted that the government's economic policies were literally shutting down huge swaths of British industry. He recalled this really heartbreaking moment up in Glasgow, seeing 2 older women out on the street selling their cups, saucers, and plates just to survive the financial hardship. The band was watching the country shut down right in front of their eyes. Section 2. The multicultural two-tone synergy. Now, if we break down the musical genealogy, we can see exactly why this sound was so totally unique. Because Coventry and Birmingham had experienced such high immigration to support that earlier industrial boom, kids were growing up in uniquely multicultural neighborhoods, and this allowed 2 very distinct musical genres to merge perfectly. From Jamaica, you had the 1960s and 70s ska and reggae, characterized by these rootsy rhythms, highly political lyrics, and a really strong anti-racist ideology. And native to Britain in 1976, you had UK punk, which was strictly opposed to commercialism, fully embraced DIY production, and focused heavily on social realism. The collision of these 2 worlds created a powerful new sound that the nation's youth instantly latched onto. They called this sound and their independent record label two-tone. Their trademark was this iconic monochrome check pattern, beautifully symbolizing black and white peacefully coexisting right beside each other. The Specials themselves featured a rare black and white lineup, drawing vocalists, guitarists, and horn players from completely different backgrounds. Now, this was highly unusual for the late 1970s, but it was a direct, natural reflection of the integrated schools, streets, and workplaces of their hometown in the West Midlands. However, the harmony inside the band was becoming increasingly at odds with the bitter reality outside. While two-tone bands were creating this groundbreaking multiracial music together, societal division was rising. As unemployment soared, factions like the National Front started blaming the economic depression on the immigrant population. According to historical accounts, races supporting the movement began showing up and instigating violence at the shows of the multiracial specials. It was terrible. The violence got so bad, actually, that the band ultimately decided they had to quit touring altogether. Section 3. Recording a Ghost Story. So the actual creation of Ghost Town took place at the 8-track Woodbine Studios in Leamington Spa, which was a conscious step down from the massive 24-track studios they'd used previously. Producer John Collins employed some very specific techniques to give the track its distinct haunting atmosphere. First, unlike the band's previous hyperactive punk ska rhythms, they went with sedate, super spacious drums and bass, heavily inspired by reggae roots. Second, because the song didn't really have a traditional intro, Collins actually faded the track in under a sound effect. And third, they layered a kit-built Transcendent 2000 synthesizer to create that literal ghostly wail you hear at the start and end of the song. But man, the atmosphere in the studio was just as dark as the track they were recording. The sources reveal that during these sessions, members of the Specials were barely even talking to each other. After 2 relentless years of touring, facing violence at their gigs, and living constantly on top of each other, the interpersonal strain had absolutely reached a breaking point. So the crucial point here is that the tension of the decaying country was literally seeping right through the studio walls. Jerry Dammers came into the sessions with the instrumental parts pre-arranged, which totally went against the band's usual collaborative method of just jamming out song ideas. Band members felt their input was sidelined, the frustration grew so intense, and the irritation over Dammers' dominance boiled over so much that guitarist Roddy Byers actually kicked a hole straight through the studio wall, a completely literal manifestation of the mounting pressures everywhere around them. Section 4. Summer of Riots. To really ground this political unrest objectively, we have to look at the hard data from the streets. Alongside massive unemployment, controversial police stop-and-search tactics on minority populations were causing immense friction. Just look at the St. Paul's riots in Bristol the previous year, which resulted in 130 arrests, 25 people hospitalized, and 19 police and members of the press injured. The environment was a total powder keg, just waiting for a spark. And this was not an isolated incident. It built into a widespread summer of unrest in 1981. Disturbances ripped right through the UK, from Brixton in London to Handsworth in Birmingham, all the way up through Manchester, Liverpool, and Leeds. It was a widespread, almost synchronized reaction from an entire youth population that felt completely abandoned. As the source material acutely notes, the government had left the youth on the shelf, and they simply weren't going to take it silently anymore. The macro anger of the UK populace perfectly matched the frustration, the dissonance, and the chaotic horns present in Ghost Town. The song getting to #1 and remaining there wasn't just because it was catchy. It was because the Specials had somehow managed to sum up the exact volatile state of a nation in just 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Section 5. An Enduring Musical Legacy. As this academic thesis by Susan Conduit demonstrates, this music is now deeply intertwined with the cultural and economic history of the 1970s West Midlands. It's studied today not just as pop music, but as a serious sociological text. The grim conditions of deindustrialization, migration, and political policy provided the exact soil needed for two-tone to grow, and for Ghost Town to become the definitive anthem of that era. Yet, despite its heavy academic legacy, we really have to remember the song's true power. Ghost Town wasn't explicitly an overt protest song naming politicians. It took massive political and economic shifts and boiled them down to the deeply, painfully personal. It's a song about your favorite Friday night spot, like the Locarno Club closing its doors. It's about seeing older folks selling their homewares on the street just to afford a meal. It's about the localized loss, the boredom, and the anger of having your future stripped away. But the story of the band itself ends with a poetic, if bitter, irony. While literally sitting in the dressing room waiting to perform their #1 hit on the legendary TV show Top of the Pops, vocalists Terry Hall and Neville Staple, along with guitarist Linval Golding, announced they were leaving the band. The lyrics of Ghost Town literally sing about people getting angry and bands not wanting to play anymore. And in the ultimate case of life imitating art, those lyrics perfectly predicted the immediate demise of the Specials' original lineup. So we'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Economic anxiety is cyclical. When industries shift, when the local spots close their doors, and when a generation of youth feels left behind on the shelf, the anger remains exactly the same. So whether it's 1981 or today, how sharply relevant is a song about angry, left-behind youth when the clubs close and the jobs vanish? The haunting echoes of Ghost Town serve as a stark reminder of what happens when a society stops listening to its most vulnerable. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep looking at the history behind the music.